Politics is tough. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
He can actually pave the way for a really nice transition into a Trump presidency that I believe is going to bring back an 80s style revolution in America.
Having, the smartest guy on the planet stuck into government bureaucracy, I would have thought that's very popular, isn't it?
Department for Government Efficiency. New department when Trump wants to eliminate departments. I've got a list of 30 Rubin predictions. They're always wrong.
God, you're such a smug prick.
Piers, I am begging you, stop inviting these stupidest leftists on to make the argument for trans civil rights.
There's LGBTQ in breaking news right now on MSNBC. Like, I love calling out the BS.
First, a stunning victory, now the MAGA revolution. Trump is at the White House with Joe Biden today as he sets forth his plans to turn things upside down. Can Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy turn the bloated federal government into a blue-chip business? Or are these planet-sized egos heading for a cosmic explosion? Will Trump's new defense team give us peace through power, or is this a sellout to the neocons? And as the Democrats simmer in the glow of a map turned Republican red, where on earth do they go from here? In a moment, we'll debate all this with an all-star panel. But first, a short word about an interview we ran yesterday.
They said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million. So they've revised the figure.
Well, how many people? How many people do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
271,000 that died in Auschwitz.
How many do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
I don't know, but I would bet my entire net worth that it was under 6 million.
Well, unsurprisingly, the interview sparks a massive response. Bilzerian has millions of followers, and many of them, of course, crawled out of the woodwork to cheerlead him. Plenty of people were shocked, as indeed I was in real time, that any public figure could spew such obvious prejudice as brazenly as he did. Others, well, a few people, are angry at me for giving him a platform. Michael Rappaport said, I'm sick of Piers Morgan having disgusting, known, proven, shitbag Jew haters on his show and saying afterwards, I don't agree. Jewish people, please unfollow this scumbag now. Piers Morgan also hates Jews. Oh, Michael, calm down, you silly little man. I obviously don't hate Jews. And the thing about platforms is that everybody has access to them. You've often yourself been offered access to mine, but you haven't appeared yet. The offer still stands if you have the guts. In the new media landscape, anyone can speak unfiltered or uncensored to their followers and acolytes. At least when I interview somebody with incendiary views, audiences get to see those views being vigorously challenged. And free speech is supposed to be uncomfortable. It's only by hearing the polar opposite of your own worldview you can be sure that you're right and understand why you believe that you are. Dan Bilzerian went a lot further than I was expecting him to. I was genuinely appalled by what I was hearing. I started out the interview thinking it was going to be more about his apparent so-called redemption arc. As you all saw, there's no redemption arc. He's sunk into an abyss of anti-Semitism. And on that point, I've interviewed many people on both sides of the Israel-Palestine debate: professors, politicians, medics, victims, journalists, musicians, diplomats, comedians, and more. At regular interviews, intervals, I've been criticised by people on both sides. Do I think Dan Bilzerian's interview made some big intellectual contribution to his vexed debate? No, I don't, actually. But as a beginner's guide to the kind of ignorant anti-Semitism that's suddenly becoming extremely and worryingly prevalent, I think it was quite an eye-opener. And to the many Bilzerian fans demanding we release the unedited interview because they thought their man surely couldn't have come across that badly, well, I'm afraid I've got bad news for you. That was the unedited interview. That's what he really sounds like when he actually has to talk about these despicable views. If we cut out the parts, frankly, that I didn't agree with, it would have been the shortest interview of the year, as well as the most shocking. But now down to real business with my stellar panel of white dudes for and against Harris. Host of the Rubin Report, Dave Rubin. Host of the David Pakman Show, David Pakman. Host of No Lie with Brian Tyler-Cohen, Brian Tyler-Cohen. And host of the Ben Ferguson podcast, Ben Ferguson. What a magnificent quartet of white dudes, if ever I've seen one. David Pakman, I want to start with you. You were very clear to me when we spoke before the election that this whole issue of transgenders in sport and so on was completely irrelevant and nobody cared. Let me remind you.
You're saying Kamala Harris and Biden have come out in support of this.
They do. They support policies which actively protect. They support policies that protect transgender athletes performing in women's sport. And I think that is madness. You're saying, well, because most of these things in this UN report were outside of America, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
What I'm saying, it's a completely contrived issue that almost no one cares about in every single opinion poll.
Wow. Well, the problem is, David, you couldn't have possibly been any more wrong, because the New York Times, the liberal Bible, did a whole piece about the ad that Trump ran, which is the Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump's for you. They said it was one of the most effective 30-second spots in political history and may have shifted the race, according to her own side, by 2.7 percentage points in Trump's favour after people watched it. Let's take a look at the ad before I come to you.
For prisoners.
For prisoners, every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
So, look, on reflection, David, do you want to admit you were completely and hopelessly wrong about this?
No, in fact, in the aftermath, we figured out how dishonest you were, Piers, during that. And hopefully we can get a little bit of an opportunity. So let me lay it out.
Of course.
First of all, I went back and looked at the UN report in more detail. The UN report said nothing of the sort that you said. What you were referring to dishonestly was one footnote from an anti-trans organization making completely unsubstantiated claims. So I will wait for the apology from you. The UN report doesn't say that, but that wasn't the crux of your question. Second part of it, that ad with Kamala, I would have loved Kamala to respond to it. All she had to say was, at the time that she said that, it was Trump administration Bureau of Prisons policy that that's what's available to trans inmates when determined medically necessary. She would follow the law. You haven't said that. And then number three, Piers, on who cares about the issue, I checked Gallup survey, trans issues at the very bottom. The reality is almost no one's trans. Almost no trans people are in competitive sports, and people do not care about the issue. However, there's a lot of money made grifting about trans this and trans that, even from people on this panel. So I get why they keep bringing it up.
Ben Ferguson, you burst out laughing then. Would you like to take the first shot back?
Yeah, number one, I've never made any money off the issue, and I doubt hardly anyone that I know, if you want to talk about how few there are making money off trans issues, but that was a very interesting play there. I don't think it's a good one, but we'll move on from that to the second point.
If that's what he meant.
Yeah, Vanderbilt, for example, they said, and I quote, "You better get on board as a doctor, and if you don't with trans surgeries, you're out of here." They said that on tape and got busted. Then they said that every kid that we can bring in.
Question.
I'm answering the question, and you may have heard a different question than I did. So you can calm down and let me finish. Apparently. You look at what they said at Vanderbilt. They said over $1 million is what each kid is worth if we can hurry up and get them these surgeries, because they're going to be on drugs the rest of their life. And we're going to be able to own them for the rest of their life financially, and we can make millions off the kids. They said that at Vanderbilt University. Now, back to the bigger point here about the election. The reason why this was an issue in the election is because Democrats made it an issue. They wanted to force little girls to be in locker rooms with grown men. They wanted to force women off the podium and allow men
like Marc
on
Robinson,
the podium.
huh?
Riley Gaines is a great example of this. Maybe you should listen, and then you'll understand why you got your ass kicked in the last presidential election and nationwide. Actually, I'm glad you guys aren't listening, because you don't listen to the damn people. And the people said this was an issue. And then you mocked them and you act like it's not an issue when in fact it is an issue. So keep acting like you know what's going on in this country when the reality is this was an important issue to voters. It was an important issue to mothers. It was an important issue to moms that have girls in sports. It was a really important issue to men and dads that have young girls in sports. And so when you act like you guys weren't trying to do this, and you weren't mandating that men compete with women and men beat women in sports, and you weren't protecting young girls in the locker room, This is what you get. You get the American people and the silent majority that said no more of this radical and extreme position, and they showed up on election day. And if you would have listened to the American people, you would have understood this issue mattered to moms and dads, including liberals and undecideds, and that's why you lost.
Yeah, look, I just don't think there's any doubt about this. Let me bring Brian Tyler-Cohen in here. You know, as much as my Democrat friends want to try and put their head in the sand and pretend this was not an issue, it just all played into the same big issue for the Democrats, which was firmly rejected by the American electorate across the board, by the way. Latinos, blacks, whites, Jewish, Muslim, just about everybody gravitated to Trump in this election in bigger numbers than before. And a lot of it was down to the economy, a lot of it was down to the immigration crisis, but a lot of it was also down to what is perceived to be just woke insanity, including this whole trans debate. And you've heard Bill Clinton was warning them about this. Joe Scarborough said afterwards it had been a disaster. You're seeing David Axelrod say they should never have fought on this hill. Lots of senior people now are coming out and saying this was a massive strategic error because you're trying to basically tell people the sky is blue when it's red.
Piers, the reality is that this wasn't an issue except for the fact that Republicans made it an issue. There was almost a $250 million disinformation campaign surrounding the issue of gender reassignment surgeries among trans inmates. This is a position that Kamala Harris has been virtually silent on for over the last 5 years, but they took a cherry-picked quote from 2019, shoehorned it into the narrative.
She said it.
Put a ton of money from a very well-funded right-wing media ecosystem behind it and convinced Americans that, again, an issue that Kamala Harris didn't say a word about in this election cycle is somehow the most important issue in this election cycle.
She had so much more money than Trump to spend. So much more money.
$1 billion.
But the idea that the right had all the money here.
It does not change the fact that what the right's money went to was a well-funded disinformation campaign.
Hang on. You say disinformation. Are you denying she said what we all heard her say?
No, but I am denying that it's her position, or that this was her position in the 2024 election cycle. Some comment that she has walked away from 5 years ago, before she was vice president, does not create her position now. But nobody would know that. Nobody would know that. If I could just have one question.
Simple question for you.
Ben, if I could just have 1 second to finish what I said. I know that you want to shoehorn it in, but you're going to have to be quiet until I finish my comments. If there wasn't such a well-funded effort, I could do the same thing, bro. I can just talk over you the whole time as well.
I'm asking you a genuine question about members of Congress. Name any Republicans that had trans flags in front of their offices, and then tell me how many Democrats had trans flags in the halls of Congress. You cannot tell me this wasn't an issue when there were congressmen and senators that if you walk the halls of Congress had trans flags up. They made it an issue. They made it an issue, man.
Do you just want to yell, or do you want to actually have a conversation? Because I know that you love the sound of your voice. But the fact that somebody
wants to yell.
Ben, my dude, I know you just want to yell. Like, this is, it's great that you have your own show. You can do that into a camera with nobody interrupting you the whole time. The fact that somebody could acknowledge the humanity of trans people is not the same as the issue of gender reassignment surgeries for trans inmates. And if you ask the majority of Americans, because of this very well-funded right-wing disinformation campaign, where again, $250 million was put behind this thing, that is why the vast majority of Americans thought she was right.
Okay, look, before I come to Dave Rubin, I actually want to bring in an extra guest, the former Democratic congressional candidate Brianna Wu, who is also a trans woman. Brianna, welcome to Uncensored. Yeah. I can't think of anyone better qualified, given you're the only trans member of the panel now, to respond to what our two liberal friends are saying.
I'll be trans if you'll give me a chance to talk.
You've had so many shows.
There's something
on trans
actually
people.
there. There's something there, Dave.
It's always some gay person that's talking on our behalf. So I'm really excited today to talk about how everyone here is wrong. David, I love your show. I consider you a friend.
I can't be wrong.
You and the Democrats are completely wrong about what trans people need. We don't need you advocating for, trans vaginoplasties in prison. We need to retreat back to the basics of what we need, which is HRT and healthcare. And the problem is the Democrats have been captured by this fringe left that has redefined what trans means to all this non-binary nonsense and all this stuff that has nothing to do with how we got our rights in the first place. Ben, you can appreciate this. I was the first trans person to ever transition at Ole Miss, our alma mater. That was very, very different. It was 20 years ago, toddy. And the thing is, the way I got equality and got people to respect me in Mississippi was not by screaming at them or lecturing them about my pronouns. It was getting them to see my humanity. This is something trans people have just completely lost. And the problem is the Democratic Party is unwilling to call out these bad actors. And because of this, we are having a conversation that does not serve trans people. Piers, I am begging you on this show, stop inviting these stupidest leftists on to make the argument for trans civil rights. Let some people actually understand this stuff. And Dave is laughing because you understand integration as a gay man. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've done the same playbook your whole career.
Well, this
works. This is
first
how you
off,
got
I'm only gay. I'm only gay starting at 10 p.m. What time is it? We'll have to check on that. But actually, you're completely right. Brianna, you're completely right. What's happening with the left is that these saviors, these progressive warriors that you see in these boxes here, think that they know more about these people than they know about themselves.
Absolutely ridiculous.
And by the way, you know, this has nothing to do with a well-funded evil money machine that the Republicans were doing. There's something called boys and girls. And
Rubin's
they are
the right
different.
guy to talk about that, isn't he?
Most parents, oh God, you're such a smug prick. Listen, most parents actually want to defend their daughters and don't want them to have the crap kicked out of them by boys, and they don't want them to be playing boys in soccer or any of these other things. That is a defense of girls. If someone, as an adult, 18, 21, we can discuss the age, wants to dress how they want, have any surgeries, take whatever drugs, do whatever they want with their body, most people, even Republicans, don't object to that. And I have no problem referring to Brianna as she, because I can clearly sense she would treat me with respect and I'll treat her with respect. And it's a two-way street rather than pandering and bowing to a bunch of people that could not give a crap about anybody else.
Yeah, and David, let me bring in David Pakman again, because you were very quick when I asked how you felt about being so wrong about this, to accuse me of being misleading, disinformation, misconstruing a United Nations report. So because we're a very nimble team here, while you were talking, they just went and double-checked, because I was curious what you were talking about. And we found, we found the United Nations report. And it's not a footnote, as you said, it's page 5 of the report. It says, and I quote, "The United Nations says nearly 900 biological females have fallen short of the podium because they were beaten out by trans athletes. The findings were compiled by the UN's Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, entitled Violence Against Women and Girls in Sport. The report said more than 600 athletes didn't medal in more than 400 competitions in 29 different sports, totaling over 890 medals. The replacement of the female sports category with a mixed-sex category has resulted in an increasing number of female athletes losing opportunities, including medals, when competing against males," the report said. So, David, again, would you like to now apologise for being not only wrong about this being an election issue, but being wrong about your correction when I asked you if you were sorry for being wrong?
Look at the underlying source, Piers. I have it printed out.
You said it was a
in the
footnote.
other room.
It wasn't a
Look
footnote.
at the underlying source.
It's page
now,
5.
I do want to say one thing about this. I actually agree with a lot of what Brianna and what Dave Rubin said. I actually agree with it. I am not the savior here to do X, Y, or Z for trans people. What I'm saying is I don't actually think I even need to play that role. I don't think this is the issue that maybe you think I believe it to be. So I agree with a lot of what Dave Rubin and Brianna said there. I do think it's important to consider that when Dave Rubin talks about well-funded this or that, his Russian money source just dried up, and he's the last person who should be talking about funding sources. And to be honest, Dave, Hold on a second. Hold on. Now Ben's jumping. Everybody's jumping. Hold on. I can't even hear. Why would Ben jump in? I'm not even addressing Ben. I think Dave's upset that Brian and I passed.
You made a very direct charge against Dave Rubin. Let Dave Rubin reply to that.
Because no one believes your BS anymore. Jesus Christ, these people are so pathetic.
They've been indicted, Rubin. The Tenet Media people were indicted.
I got indicted.
He was not indicted, and it said in the report, if you weren't a smug prick, to quote him
I
earlier,
didn't say Rubin was indicted. I just said the money dried up.
That Dave Rubin and the others involved did not know about it, and this is why people think you're kind of a jackass.
Yes, this is why everyone hates progressives.
Putting words in my mouth.
This is the reason why you read the report. And by the way, Pakman, if this happened to you, and in the
Ben's
report it said you were unaware, if it said that you were unaware, I would defend you because I don't think you indict people for things.
I'm
when the federal
defending
government
Dave.
says in the
I'm
indictment,
defending Dave Rubin.
in the indictment,
I'm defending
they
him.
had no knowledge of the money where it was coming from. So don't be a
I'm
jackass.
defending Dave on that note, but the money dried up.
Pakman,
You're being a tool, man.
You are no real Pakman, which I'm quite good at. You know, there's a reason, Piers. There's a reason that everyone hates progressives, and the reason that everyone hates progressives, it's not just that they're wrong about all of the issues and they will lie and their only real goal is power. It's because they're also smug elitists. And Pakman, I did see online the other day, you were crying because your audience is purging you and you're running out of subscribers and you're in a doom loop. And the reason is no one gives, Piers, pardon me, a shit about this woke bullshit anymore. We've had it, and now you guys can sit back and be quiet. You want to talk about people being paid for their ideas?
Just let me address this.
It's you people who have had the entire cultural machine for 20 years. You've had all of entertainment. You have had all of Hollywood. You have had all of music. You've had all your P. Diddy parties and Epstein and everything else. And now enough of us have had it. So crawl back into your little irrelevant cave. It's time, bro.
Can I address any of that, Piers? Is that allowed?
Sure.
Okay. It is absolutely true that in the 48 hours after the election, a lot of very upset leftists started pulling back from political content. I was hit by it.
No, not from political content, from your political content.
I have to be able to talk about it,
them about everything.
I have to be able to talk. I have to be able to get a word in. Unless you just want Dave Rubin to talk. Let me know, Piers.
I love hearing Dave Rubin talk.
I would prefer that.
Thank you, Piers.
No, if there's no rebuttal allowed, then I won't rebut.
You've probably done most of the talking so far, so why don't you do a bit more talking?
I'll say this and then I'll be quiet the rest of the show.
Because Brian hasn't said anything for ages. I want to bring him in.
I want Brian to win. That completely reversed. I do think that it must be that Dave is upset that Brian and I have surpassed him in viewership and subscribers. Because if you just look at the numbers, it lasted 48 hours. They all came back.
I don't even know who this other guy is.
Well, look, if it's going to come to that, I'm the biggest rocket in the room, right? I mean, it's like as Trump said to Kim Jong-un, you got your little rocket, I got my big rocket. So let's not get into the size of each other's YouTube rocket.
But that's the smug nonsense. Nobody cares about that.
It's the facts, Dave.
Dave calls anything inconvenient.
Let me bring in Brian.
Let me bring in Brian. What your views are, but I couldn't care less. I know your ideas are terrible. Like, I don't care what your views are. Who cares?
Let me bring in Brian.
You brought it up.
Brian, on a wider point about this whole issue of wokeism. You know, Elon Musk was big on this for the entire presidential campaign, saying that there's a woke mind virus and it's going to get rejected. It has inarguably been rejected. And I do think we have reached a tipping point now where people have just felt that the left has gone so far bonkers. Look at Bill Maher. Bill Maher's politically where I am, pretty much. And he shares my view completely, that liberals basically have gone nuts. They've taken these extreme positions on stuff that most Americans, and in fact it's the same in the UK, but most Americans just feel no connection with whatsoever. As people like Axelrod, Joe Scarborough, Bill Clinton, others, as they all come forward and say this out loud, do you kind of agree with them? I mean, do you accept there's got to be a lot of inward looking by the Democrats here to say, we have gone too far here?
Piers, here's why this is not going to go away. It's because it's not that Republicans are descending into some woke pit of the depths of hell. It is that everybody else will accept Republican framing on wokeism. And so, I think I'm a pretty good indicator of where the mainstream of the Democratic Party is. Do you know how many times I've spoken about trans issues on my shows because they were the #1 issue of the day? Literally never. Literally never. But if you watch Fox News, if you watch all of the ads that happen in this election cycle, you would think that it was all Democrats could think of from the second they woke up in the morning until the second they went to bed at night. It was, how can we get more people surgeries, gender reassignment surgeries? Let's get just trans sports, like the whole thing. It is not what Democrats are talking about, but it's what Republicans exploit in terms of convincing
I don't agree.
Hang on.
Don't all shout, please.
It is so difficult.
Hang on that one point.
It is so difficult to finish a
Brian,
sentence.
on that one point, all I would say is this. Both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have signed up to trans athletes being allowed to compete in women's sport. So it's not a right-wing propaganda campaign to try and tell people that's what's happening. It is official government policy.
Did Kamala Harris say a word? Did Kamala Harris say a word about trans people in this election cycle?
She has definitely spoken about it this year.
Yes.
This year,
yeah.
while she was running to be the president of the United States, which seems like an important distinction in terms of what we're talking about here.
She
mentioned the issue of trans.
Actually, I think she did at the town hall. You're right. You're right.
She did.
Yeah.
She talked about it in CNN during the town hall. Like, here's the problem with what you're saying is, it's Democrats that advocated and mandate that women have to compete with men in sports. There was no Republican doing that, and you say like it didn't exist now. You say that it's not happening where they're actually doing transitional surgeries to very young children. It's not Republicans that are doing that. Republicans are passing laws to protect kids under 18 from body mutilation. You say that it's the NCAA that's not allowing athletes or the Olympic Committee in boxing at the Olympics. We all watched it, men beating the hell out of women. And then you say it's not an issue of the left. If it's not the left that's doing this, then who is it? Because it sure as hell isn't the right.
Yeah.
And this is why I go back to the point. You lose elections when you lie to the American people to their face and you say, we're not doing this, when everybody sees you're doing it.
Well, let me again.
First of all,
hang on. Let me again bring in Brianna because you are Brianna. Hang on. Let me bring in a trans woman just who's put her hand up. I know
this is my whole problem with all of this, Piers, is, look, respectfully, the liberal shows here, you're right. You don't talk about trans issues. You don't invite people like me on. We don't have a say in our own party. And what has happened? This fringe progressive nut job part of our party has hijacked my movement as well as we've hijacked so many other movements. Look at black people. Do you think black people want their local police department burned down and like defund the police? Of course they don't. Do you think most women want to shout their abortions? Of course they don't. Trans people are just the latest victim. And the problem is the left, like respectfully, trans people don't have a voice on the left. So you're listening to this non-binary, communist, Hamas supporting fringe. And they're the ones talking to Kamala and saying like, look, unless you stand with like vaginoplasty in prison, you're a transphobe. So of course the entire party is going along with that. The problem is then it gives Ben and his ilk this ammunition. So they're the only ones talking to America about these issues. You heard him say a bunch of stuff here that's just not true.
Okay.
And we have to deal with this.
What did I say it's not true? Hold on. From one old misread to another. What did I say that was not true? Because there's nothing that I just said there.
The woman that was in boxing, we're not sure yet. I personally believe she's intersex, but that is a different issue than calling her.
Well, actually, that's not right. No.
There was two boxers.
Brianna, hang on.
Please, if I'm wrong, let me know.
The latest report is that, hang on, I can answer that. The latest report that came out of France, an investigation that came out of France last week, is that Iman Khalif, who won the gold medal, who fought an opponent who quit after 40 seconds because she'd never been hit that hard, that Iman Khalif has the male chromosomes, and that's why she was banned from the World Championships along with one other fighter. And there's been no actual proof that she doesn't have male chromosomes. So for all intents and purposes, I'm afraid it looks like she is a biological male, albeit not a full biological male. In other words, my understanding from that investigation is that she has male sexual reproductive organs, but not completely.
It's a dude.
But what it does do, it gives her the advantage of male biology, which means that she won the gold medal. Look, I want to segue out of this, Brianna.
I don't support trans women in women's sports. Just to be clear, we didn't transition.
Piers, can I try something real?
Most of us are under-socialized computers.
You know what? Here's the thing. If I'm a liberal, Brianna, and I've spent the last 4 years trying to tell my liberal mates Get off this bullshit about trans athletes destroying women's sport. It may be this election result should serve as the reminder to people, get off this thing.
Exactly.
Because
It's
people
the best
don't want to
thing
hear
that
it.
happened to trans people,
the only
Piers.
time that
I'm
I've heard
begging
this
for
issue.
that to
Let me give
happen.
Brian the final word on this. Brian?
Yes.
We're going
The
to
only
change something.
time that I have heard or debated this issue is literally with you and other people who accept right-wing framing on this issue. So the only people who are
It's not
continuing
right-wing
to perpetuate
framing.
this as an issue, it is right-wing framing because
I'm not
because
right-wing,
nobody
so how can it be right-wing
because we're
framing?
not talking about it.
Hey,
Again, the only time I hear about
one.
it, you can watch MSNBC, you can watch communist, Marxist MSNBC all day long. You will not hear this issue. The only reason that it's put into the zeitgeist on a daily basis is
Let me bring in Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin.
Every day on my show.
Dave
They talk
Rubin.
about this stuff.
Of
Listen, how about
course
we do,
right-wingers
let's
talk
try it
about
this way
this.
with a
That's the
simple yes or
point.
no answer. Let's
That
try a
is the
simple
whole
yes or no
point.
question to
Yeah.
Pac-Man and the
Dave.
guy in the hoodie.
Right there.
Let's try it. Let's try it this way.
Right there on my
Would
phone.
you-
MSNBC. There's LGBTQ in breaking news right now on MSNBC. Like, I love calling out the BS. It's right there, MSNBC, on my phone.
Dude,
I don't know what that is.
It must be
Like,
his right-wing funded
Hang on,
phone.
Dave
Oh
Rubin.
my God.
Dave Rubin.
Yeah, Piers,
Yeah.
let me just, I'll try this very simply for our progressive friends here, for Pac-Man and the hoodie guy. If you guys have, I don't know if you guys have kids, but if you had a 14-year-old girl and she was a wrestler, would you be okay? Yes or no? No other words. Yes or no? Would you be okay with her wrestling a 14-year-old boy?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I wrestled for a decade and men and women wrestle together. That's how it works.
Please stop advocating
champ.
this. It hurts me. It hurts.
That's
our rights.
how it
Just
works.
knock
I
it
wrestled
off.
for a decade. There
You
is no
shut you
distinction
trans
between men and
person.
women.
You have a progressive warrior fighting for you.
That's
I've
how
actually got a
better.
better. I have a better question.
So if you
I have a
wanna bring
better
up the
question.
issue of
Hang on, I have a better question,
that's
Brian.
literally how it
Brian.
goes.
Frankly, I thought Miss
I have a
Pac-Man
better
was better than
question.
regular
I have a better
Pac-Man, so
question.
maybe he knows.
If Floyd Mayweather says, I'm now identifying as a woman and wants to fight against a female biological actual woman, Brian, would you be happy with that?
No, of course not.
So you
should-
agree?
it would. Yes,
You
but, what
agree?
but we're having two different. Piers, we're having two different conversations. I'm saying that the reason the vast majority of Americans think that this was the #1 issue in this election cycle is because a well-funded right-wing media ecosystem continues to thrust it into the
what are you
zeitgeist
showing us?
as if this is
Just
what
showing you
Democrats care about,
MSNBC right
as if
now,
this is
just
what
right
Democrats
now.
are talking about.
Yeah. What
Ben?
a second
Say
Trump
again?
presidency would mean for trans people like me. Headline MSNBC as we speak. But MSNBC never talks about trans issues at all.
Okay.
Yeah, there
They
it is.
must
proved
have
the point.
access to some
Let me
sort of
let me
secret
change. Let me
Republican
go to
internet.
Dave
I wanna
Rubin
get
and
on
change
there, man.
subject. Dave Rubin, I want to
Call
play a
Google.
clip. Hang on.
Yes.
Let's change subject. We've done the trans debate. Let's
Oh,
just
wait.
hang
I
on.
have a phone too, and it has MSNBC on it. Democrats would get nothing for throwing trans Americans under the bus. Where did we get this thing? This is incredible.
Look,
What's
you guys
going
can
on
think
here?
it's like some gotcha to that MS
you're
acknowledges
the one
I'm
who
changing
said
the
all
subject.
MSNBC
that
never
MS
talks about it.
acknowledges
said it
the
doesn't
existence of
happen.
trans
I'm
people.
changing
but
the
that doesn't
subject.
mean that, again, that doesn't
I'm
mean that
changing
this
the
election
subject.
cycle this
Changing the
election
subject.
cycle was some referendum
Hey,
on trans
Brian,
Americans.
I am changing the subject. We're running out of
No,
time.
it's a
I want to
referendum on
discuss
you
other
guys.
things, all right?
Now, when you lost.
I want to play a clip of Donald Trump at the White House today. He's just met Joe Biden, and this is what happened.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much it. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome.
Now, Dave, I've got to say, kudos to Joe Biden for doing that. Would it not have been better for America if Donald Trump had done that himself 4 years ago? Serious question.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument, but I think we're long past that argument. I would rather focus on what Joe Biden, I think, did right there, and what we now have in a very interesting, 2+ months of the remainder of the Biden administration, where basically Biden, or whatever's left of Biden, or whoever's driving Biden, no longer has to placate to the completely lunatic progressive fringe anymore. And Biden actually could take advantage of some of the reordering that we feel throughout the world right now, not just in America, but quite literally across the globe. And he can actually pave the way for a really nice transition into a Trump presidency that I believe is going to reignite the American dream and bring back an 80s style revolution in America. I think we're going to have a burst throughout the economy. I think it's going to be cultural. I think we're going to get new music and new art and new creativity and new businesses on the forefront of AI and all of these things. And Biden he has 2 months now where he could be like, you know what, we're going to get our 5 or 6 American hostages who are somewhere under Gaza back. We can do that. Like there's a real win for Biden to end up with here, rather than, oh, you ended up with dementia and then ushered in quite literally the worst candidate in American history and placated to the radical left for 4 years when you were sold to us as old, moderate Joe. So Biden, and again, we don't know if Biden's running the show or it's Jill or whoever, but I think there's a real opportunity for him right now to do the right thing and usher in a really strong 4 years for Donald Trump.
Okay, and David Pakman, the appointments that Trump has put forward so far, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will run a new Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, having, the most successful, richest and possibly smartest guy on the planet getting stuck into government bureaucracy, I would have thought that's very popular, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so funny. A Department for Government Efficiency, new department when Trump wants to eliminate departments, and instead of being run by one person, it's being run by 2.
But they are going to eliminate, according to Musk, they are going to eliminate dozens of departments, though. So by the end of the process,
he said he's going to get rid of 300 departments.
They're going to get rid of a lot of departments, David Pakman. So, I mean, that seems to me to be a good thing, doesn't it? Or do you think that they should be...
Yeah, listen, in his first term, it was not exactly promises made, promises kept. I'm going to reserve judgment to see what happens. And the reason why, and Dave, honestly, I know we're not getting along here. I do like you. I wish we were still friends. I'd love to get our kids together to play soon. Dave Rubin making predictions... is crazy because his predictions always go wrong. Red wave for Republicans in 2018 didn't happen. 30% black vote for Trump in 2020 didn't happen. Republicans get 54 Senate seats in 2022. I've got a list of 30 Rubin predictions. They're always wrong. So I'm going to wait and see.
I can see why you're looking for new friends, Pakman. I think Piers can attest to this. Being in the business we're in, you're going to get election predictions wrong. I have no problem admitting that. I get election predictions wrong all the time. But when it comes to getting the ideas right, I think I've had a pretty damn good track record on that. And again, you're just illustrating why nobody likes progressives. Your smug, holier-than-thou attitude, it's just disgusting to most people. You think you're the savior for people that want nothing to do with you. And frankly, for all the David Pakman subscribers that want to watch a show that actually is informative and funny and interesting and, dare I say, irreverent, I would tune into the Rubin Report.
Well, they're probably all watching Uncensored at the moment. Let me bring in Brian. I mean, Brian, sure. I thought it was very interesting, this meeting between Trump and Biden. They obviously can't stand each other. They've abused each other all year. But Biden did show him the respect of bringing him to the White House and shaking hands, and they talked about a smooth transition and stuff. I mean, that is good, isn't it? After the mayhem we saw 4 years ago. I mean, I like to see that. What I would hope is that Trump, in his inauguration speech, hits a much more unifying tone than he did in 2016.
Right. I mean, I guess we're 8 years into new tone for Trump. It's never going to happen. He is not that person. Biden afforded him every ounce of respect that he couldn't be bothered to show, and that he couldn't be bothered to show Joe Biden or any Democrat over the last 4 years, while he lied about some big lie, and all of these right-wing mouthpieces perpetuated this lie with zero evidence, and then they all just claimed that because Donald Trump was too small to admit that he lost, they all claimed that there must be some fraud, which magically disappeared as soon as 2024 rolled around.
All right,
so there was mass cheating that the Democrats figured out how to do when they didn't control government. But then when Democrats do control government, we just forgot to cheat this time around? The fact is that there is no acknowledgement from the right that for the last 4 years, these Republican officials that are listening to Donald Trump, these Republican mouthpieces like the ones on this panel, all lied because it served their political interests, but now they won't acknowledge that he was lying once it doesn't serve their political interests anymore.
All right, Ben, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, let's go back to the question you asked. Is it good for America to see these two men shaking hands and talking? Yes. I actually think it's probably because Joe Biden experienced what Donald Trump experienced for 4 years, and that was people coming after you, trying to undermine you, and having a coup on you. And when the big five of the Democratic Party excommunicated Joe Biden and said, we're going to force you out, I think he was probably the happiest man in America the night that Kamala Harris lost, because it was revenge for them kicking him out. So I think there is a different Joe Biden sitting with a different Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is different now than he was in 2016. And I think these two men have experienced this level of persecution against them. And there probably is genuinely more respect now for the two of them than there has ever been in the last 8 years.
And Ben, hang on, Brian. Hang on, Brian. And Ben, hang on, Brian.
I've
got a question for Ben.
never heard such lazy commentary in my entire life.
Ben,
like,
Brian,
you're talking about? Joe
Brian,
Biden was the happiest person in the world.
Let me ask a question,
yourself, my dude? Like,
excuse me. I run this panel at the moment. Ben, a question for you, Ben, because I put this forward on X and got a lot of blowback from MAGA Republicans. But I said, if Trump really wanted to set a different tone for the second administration, what about pardoning Hunter Biden? Not because I think he's innocent of the crimes, but because it would go a long way, perhaps, to showing the left that Trump is a different person, that he is prepared to forgive and move on. What do you think of that?
I think it's a terrible idea. I think you have to be held accountable for your actions. And I think the abuse of power by Hunter Biden, by Joe Biden's brother, and by the Biden crime family, and the money they were receiving from Ukraine and from Russia and from China is egregious. Now, let me also say, I think the olive branch is, hey, I'm not going to weaponize the government to come after you. I'm going to let you go off into the sunset, but I'm not going to make it easy on you and do this pardon, which, by the way, if he did pardon him, I'm a realist. The two people in these boxes over here, I promise you, there's no way that would make them like Donald Trump. They would still hate him. They would still come after him. They would still say he's Hitler and we're all Nazis. And so I'm sorry, their elections have consequences. We kicked your ass. We're going to go in and do government.
All right, let me bring in Brianna.
And that's the way it's going to be.
Okay, let me bring in Brianna. Brianna, just on a big picture here. Sure. Brianna, as an American, Brianna, what would you like to hear Trump say on Inauguration Day?
I would like to see us find a way to move forward as a country. I've thought so much, Piers, about what I'm going to do differently this time around, because Resistance 2.0 is not what the country needs right now. Don't get me wrong. I am a Democrat. I worked 16-hour days trying to get Kamala Harris elected. This election broke my heart. But at the same time, what is frustrating to me about this panel is I see my fellow Democrats and we're sliding into the same mistakes that brought us here. The American people do not care, respectfully, about your show viewer count. They don't care about this left versus right nonsense. They are looking for stuff that makes their lives better. So what I am committed to doing is Trump has done some stuff I think is good. I think he's taking a much harder stand on Israel. I like the people he's appointing to represent us and to bring our countries closer together after I think Biden and Kamala Harris have really spit in the Jewish community's face. And, what I'm willing to do as an American, not as a Democrat, so when he does stuff like that, I agree with, I will stand with him. And, Ben, you're wrong. If Trump were to come forward tomorrow and say, for the good of the country, I am pardoning Hunter Biden because these charges are just out of proportion to the issue at hand, that would mean a lot to me. But what I need for y'all to do is to give some of that goodwill back. We are not going to move forward as a country if everyone on this panel cannot stop hating each other at some point.
To let someone get away with abusing their power. That's not goodwill.
Pick something else.
So when you abuse the power you're given.
That Trump should be sentenced?
Well, I actually personally, I think Joe Biden, before he goes out of office, I think he should pardon Trump for the ridiculous Stormy Daniels case. I honestly do.
Wait, can I ask a question here? Piers, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
Ben, do you think that Donald Trump should go through with his sentencing then, because everybody should be held accountable for their crimes?
I don't know. I think the whole thing was a farce. I think the whole Stormy Daniels case, I think Joe Biden should pardon him and end the whole thing now.
Do you think that Donald Trump should be allowed to be continued being prosecuted for in the Washington, D.C. case, or the classified documents case, or the Georgia RICO prosecution, since everybody has to be held accountable for their crimes?
No, because I think it's very clear that it says you cannot go after a sitting president, and I think we all know it's law there, and every time
that's not what I asked you.
I just answered the question. I just said no. The first thing that came out of my mouth was the word no, and then I explained why. You need to listen.
So you said everybody should be held accountable for their crimes, but not Trump.
The American people just held Donald Trump accountable, and they said they thought it was crap, and they reelected him.
That's not how it works. I'm asking you.
Yes, it is.
You said that everybody should be held accountable for their crimes.
And that is exactly why they have said we're going to wind it all down.
Okay,
That's exactly why.
All right, listen, Dave Rubin has to leave in a couple of minutes. Dave, you talked about predictions for elections. It would be remiss of me not to point out that about 9 days before the election, I said this on Fox News. Look, my gut feeling, and I had this in 2016, and when I was saying it and writing it in 2016, people were laughing at me. But I kept saying, I'm getting a feeling that the Trump train is steaming to victory. I get that feeling again now. I've been in LA, I've been in New York. I'm getting a lot of people who did not vote Trump last time, but who are prepared this time, even if they don't like him, they're prepared to vote for him this time to stop Kamala Harris becoming president. I'm going on my gut, and I'm feeling he could actually end up winning quite big. You know the moral of that story, Dave Rubin, is always trust a British gut, is the moral of that story.
Yeah, well, the moral of the story, I think, for the progressives is stop being so authoritarian and hysterical and better than everybody, because what you've done is you've taken all of the good liberals of America, of which there are many, and most of them are now Republicans, or at least voting for Republicans. And I would like to say to Brianna, who I've enjoyed watching a bit of her evolution here, is that what I think you're going to find over the next year or two is that consistently you are going to have some differences with people on the right, but they are going to welcome you. They are going to treat you with respect. They're going to agree to disagree, and you're going to have rich conversations and find an awful lot of agreement where you thought there would only be scorched earth. And on the other side of it, you're going to find exactly what you have found over the course of this panel. And I think very quickly that will change your party affiliation. But maybe I'm wrong, because I do get some predictions wrong. We'll see.
Well, thank you, Dave Rubin. Thank you. Sorry, who was that?
Just say,
yeah, Brianna, last word to you. Last word to Brianna.
I hear what you're saying, Dave, and respectfully, trans rights are under attack like I've never seen in my entire life. And I transitioned over 20 years ago. So I will not be moving to the other side like you, but I'm always open for a conversation. We got trans rights by policies right down the middle, and it's what this fringe left has completely thrown us under the bus on. So
yeah, and you know what, Brianna? I think it's such an important point. I absolutely and have always wanted fairness and equality for all trans people of the same kind that I enjoy, but not to the point where it starts to erode women's rights. Exactly. And that's the crucial debate that has to be properly had.
Piers,
and that's the one Democrats have failed
this whole thing, Piers, this whole thing changed 10 years ago. If I was writing a book on the history of trans rights and when it went wrong, it was on your show. 10 years ago, Janet Mock on CNN, you held an interview with her. We were not talking about trans stuff back then. Everyone in the community was thrilled about it. What did she do? She went on your program. She lectured you. She was beyond rude. She told you she was not interested in your opinion on anything. She just shut you down. It was this.
Well, worse than that, she said that I was very respectful to her. I gave her the platform of CNN primetime worldwide. And then because I said that she was born a boy and then transitioned to be a trans woman, she said that was transphobic and tried to basically destroy me. And right there was the start of this nonsense. Obviously, I wasn't being transphobic. Actually, I was being completely biologically, scientifically accurate. She was born a biological boy, and she transitioned and became a trans woman. And I have full respect for her for doing that. But don't then go after people who actually are allies. That's the irony.
But Piers, this is the problem. I'm saying this to you respectfully, but I've seen your evolution over the last 10 years, and I understand why you have less patience from my side than you did 10 years ago. I get it. I deal with these freaks every day. But you've got to, our stories, people that understand that actually medically transition, our stories are not in the media. No one is talking to us. We're horrified by all this nonsense.
I agree.
Brianna, give us a shot.
Brianna, it's why you're such an important voice in this. Because again, I have repeatedly said the people I feel most sorry for are people who have transitioned, who are just trying to get on with their lives and just be treated equally and fairly, and they're getting dragged into all these ludicrous headlines like 6'4" biological male who was crap at swimming in the men's game transitions and suddenly beats women by 50 seconds. It is bullshit.
And by the way, that's not at odds with anything. That's not at odds with anything that the Trump administration is pushing right now. Remember, many years ago, when Trump was asked about trans bathrooms, he said, "Hey, I build hotels. You want to tell me I can have one bathroom? That's fine."
And by the way, when it comes to Trump and the LGBTQ community, can we just remind us? In fact, why don't we, given it's been quite a contentious panel, Trump has been ending his rallies with the famous YMCA dance, right? Which is a gay anthem performed by a bunch of gay guys, right? And is now taken fire and has now become a trend around the world. Why don't we all come together as one big cis LGBT, whatever you want to call it, community, and have a little dance? Here we go. And may I note the two liberals were the two biggest wusses not dancing. As the rest of us got fully into the groove. Anyway, young men and Brianna, lovely to have you all on the programme. Thank you all very much indeed. Enjoyed the spirited debate. Long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now the Democratic campaign has been labelled a $1 billion disaster by dissenting voices within the DNC amid reports of lavish spending on celebrities. Despite record-breaking fundraising, the campaign somehow appears to have ended up in debt. Joining me now is Lindi Li, a Democratic donor and a member of the DNC's National Finance Committee. Well, welcome to you, Lindy. It seems quite extraordinary that Kamala Harris should get all this cash and then still get into debt. How has that happened?
Your guess is as best as mine. So thank you so much for having me. And it's just amazing how every single hour more reports come out to substantiate what I've been saying. Just in the last couple of hours, more reports are coming out about how even the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, is shocked at the amount of debt that we're going to be saddled with in the years to come. We don't even know the extent of the full damage yet. And just last night, we learned that the Harris campaign paid Al Sharpton $500,000, just moments before an endorsement. We learned that the campaign paid Harper Productions. You know who's behind Harper Productions?
Oprah Winfrey.
Billionaire Oprah. All right. So I raised millions for the campaign. A lot of that is through grassroots donors who gave $25 or even $10. It pains me that, you know, the money of these hardworking Americans are going to these billionaires.
Yeah, I mean, and the irony is that she kept saying, you know, I'm the woman for the middle class and working people, and I'm not into this elitist stuff. And there she is being completely elitist. Oprah Winfrey was doorstepped by TMZ and said this.
How do you think the election went?
Not talking about the election. Thank you very much.
Oh, is it true that they paid you $1 million for the endorsement for Kamala?
Not true.
Not true, okay.
I was paid nothing, ever.
Now, I mean, technically that might be true, but FEC filings show the Harris campaign paid two $500,000 payments to Oprah's production company, Harpo Productions. Our spokesman for Harpo has now just said in the last few hours, the campaign paid for the production costs of Unite for America, a live streaming event that took place September 19th outside Detroit, Michigan. Oprah Winfrey was at no point during the campaign paid a personal fee, nor did she receive a fee from Harpo. But the bottom line is, that's $1 million to her production company, and then Oprah's out there giving the big endorsement and putting her arm around Kamala. I mean, it's all blending into one thing, isn't it?
Right. And something that's left unsaid, and I'm someone who ran for office myself, who has a deep understanding of FEC regulations. You know what? She didn't have to accept the $1 million. She could have made an in-kind contribution. It was her choice to take the payment. So I don't buy the semantics here, because she's really just, you know, really just trying to wiggle her way out of this. She owns a production company. The production company got paid. It's transitive property. She got paid.
Right.
There's no other way around this.
No, I completely agree. It's paper shuffling, excuse me. On the bigger picture of celebrity endorsements, it's been very interesting that Kamala Harris, rather like Hillary Clinton, got all the biggest stars in the world, seemingly, to endorse her. Taylor Swift, to Harrison Ford, to George Clooney, to Oprah Winfrey. And none of that worked. And in fact, my gut feeling is that it actually drove a lot of Americans to go and vote Trump.
Exactly. So the question was, think of it from a voter's point of view. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They work, 9 to 5 jobs or even more. The choice is whether to go to a star-studded concert or to use the same money to grab an Uber to vote. Which one do you think people are going to pick?
Yeah.
So the huge amounts of crowd, the massive amounts of people who went to these concerts, they weren't going for Kamala Harris. They were going for a free concert. They were going to see Lady Gaga or Ricky Martin or whoever
And in
it is.
Beyonce's case, they didn't even get a concert.
Right. And that's why, unfortunately, Vice President Harris got booed at her own concert because everyone was under the delusion that Beyonce was going to perform. And the worst part of it, that was the second time we failed to deliver Beyonce. I don't know if you remember, Piers, but at the DNC, it was the same rumor.
It's interesting. It reminds me.
Beyonce didn't come. Everyone was let down. And they did it again.
Yeah, I know. Amazing.
I'm a millennial. This is my generation. So we're kind of like a Beyonce generation. It's just such an unforced error.
The other thing is, I don't think you can. It's wrong to say you can't buy an election. If you had, unlimited funding, you probably could. But the interesting message, I think, from this win and from Trump's win in 2016 is that actually you've got to have a message that resonates. You can spend all the money you want, but if the message you're promoting with all this money through big advertising campaigns is just not landing with the electorate, it doesn't matter how much you spend.
That's absolutely right. And you know what? And people in the Democratic Party is still blind to the truth. People, not only on network TV, but in the rank and file, they are still blaming so-called misogynists and racists. They are attacking our entire country as bigots because Kamala Harris didn't win. It doesn't work like that. You can't alienate the voters and expect to win. There were more fundamental issues than just the usual excuses. People are so angry that cumulative price hikes are still very much an issue. People are angry about about immigration and the border. And I'm speaking as a naturalized immigrant, okay? I'm from Sheffield, England, by the way. My family applied to come to the United States. We waited in line. We did things the right way. We came through JFK Airport. I did not storm the southern border. That is the way it should be. And I should not get attacked for saying this as a Democrat. We lost this election because we are unwilling to say what I'm saying right now, that border security, we should have a very secure border. We should have billions of dollars more in border security in an orderly process. Not everyone has the right to just be American. It's a privilege to be American.
You know what? It's so true. The number of Americans I spoke to who were legal immigrants to America in the last 20, 30 years who all said the same thing, that they had gone through a long and quite difficult process to get legal citizenship of the United States of America. And they were angrier about what's happening on the border than anyone who was born in America because of the extra effort they had to make to get into the country. And that's what the Democrats just didn't seem to have realized.
Totally right.
Yeah, and who was the border czar under Joe Biden? Kamala Harris. I think it's honestly as simple as that. Inflation and woke madness. You put it all together, you have a cocktail for electoral landslide defeat, and that's what happened. Lindi Li, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you.